He threatened to kill me. This happened when I was 19. I'm in my late 30s now. I worked at an old-fashioned local diner in my city as a waitress. The job was fun, and the diner was really cute and had multiple locations. It had a bar area and jukes box. We sold breakfast and lunch items and stayed open 24/7. I worked the day shift with the manager and usually one other waitress. The manager doubled as the short order fry cook. We had a few regulars that came in on certain days at the same time. They were old guys that shamelessly hit on us and made crude jokes. They especially thought I was attractive as I was young and put a lot of work in my physical appearance. One day, around 2 hours before my shift ended, a tall gentleman walked in and took a seat at the bar area. I greeted him, gave him a cup of water, and set a menu before him, which was customary. I told him to call me over whenever he was ready to order. He said nothing and just stared at me smiling. I asked if he heard me. Still nothing, just staring and smiling at me. I walked away and his eyes followed me everywhere. He hadn't touched the water or opened the menu. I approached him again and asked, did he want to order anything? He just smiled and told me his name was Anthony. I said, okay, Anthony, are you going to order anything? Because, frankly, his staring and smiling was making me uncomfortable. He stood up and said to me, I'm going to marry you, and walked out. It was a what the fuck moment, but the last hour and a half of my shift picked up and I kind of forgot about it. On my next shift, Anthony showed up again and sat on the same stool. I brought him another cup of water but didn't bother with the menu. He started his creepy staring and smiling again. I asked, was he going to order something or just stare? He just kept staring at me and smiling creepily. I told my manager that he was creeping me out and she told him if he wasn't going to order, he needed to leave. He got up and walked to the door. Before exiting, he told me, you're going to be my wife. I went on with my shift but felt weirded out. The next day, Anthony showed up but didn't come in. As I was sweeping the dining area, I noticed him staring at me through the windows in the double doors. When our eyes met, he smiled and ran off. I won't lie, I was pretty nervous. After that, I had 2 days off and put it out of my mind. On my next shift, it was early, and the old guys were there with their normal inappropriate conversations. This was during the time when Kanye dropped Gold Digger, and surprisingly, they knew the song. Anthony walked in and took his normal seat in the bar. I ignored him and filled the coffee cups of the old guys. As I was doing this, I started joking that a girl like me was the type of woman mentioned in Kanye's song, that I would never date a broke man, and that I looked high maintenance. Well, this angered Anthony because he suddenly slammed hard on the counter and screamed at me that I was a money-hungry bitch. He said he hated bitches like me. Everyone was quiet and still. You could hear a pin drop. My heart was racing. I screamed for him to get out now. He stormed to the door and screamed back, "Bitch, I'm going to kill you," before running out the door. Well, little 19-year-old me was literally shaking like a leaf in the wind. My heart was pounding and I couldn't concentrate or think. My manager told me to go take a breather in the storage room. I did and called the non-emergency police number. I spoke to a kind lady cop who took my statement and Anthony's description down. They sent a cop to look for him, but he was gone. I told my family what happened, and every day a different relative sat up at my job, ate breakfast or lunch until I got off work. It was really sweet and I felt a lot safer with them there. After 2 weeks after that incident, the lady cop called me and told me Anthony had been arrested on drug charges, and because he fit the description I had given, and surprisingly, he had given me his real first name, they knew it was the same guy. He also confessed to stalking and threatening me. She said I no longer need to worry as he was going away for a while. I thanked her for calling me. Fast forward a few years later, I still worked at the diner part-time between college classes. I was sweeping the dining area when Anthony walked in. For a minute, my heart stopped. The same fear I felt at 19 creeped back in and I couldn't make my legs or mouth move. To my surprise, he instantly apologized to me. He said he was really sorry about how he acted back then and that he was high on drugs and really messed up. He hoped I could forgive him. I was pleasantly surprised. I told him he was forgiven. I never saw him again. Unfortunately, all the diners closed down, the last one during the pandemic. Yes, it probably sounds insane. I should start with the backstory, but God, How hard is it to remember the simple, happy times before everything that happened? I met my wife, Catherine, when she was 24 and I was 28. We lived in a small town in Kentucky. You'd have trouble finding it even with a map, and the population was tiny. Everyone knew each other. I'd worked as an electrician all my life. First at a factory, then I started my own small business. Repairs, wiring, private jobs. My love life had never really worked out until I met her. She worked as an elementary school teacher, smiled at every child, was kind and polite to everyone. My Catherine was the only ray of light in the darkness around me. I loved her for her simplicity. She could find joy in the most ordinary things. Morning coffee, the smell of wet grass, a cheap movie on the couch. We didn't have much money, but we had peace, a home, a dog, and that feeling that everything was right, that everything would be fine. I spent evenings fixing things while she wrote lessons plans or knitted. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, listening to crickets, or stay up all night talking about everything and nothing, thinking about children and what we named them. Back then, it felt like life had finally found its meaning. The problems began maybe 2 months ago. At first, small things. She started to have trouble sleeping, then began looking at me strangely, as if something in my face disturbed her. I asked if everything was okay, and she laughed. Sorry, just tired. The kids at school are driving me crazy. Gradually, though, I can't even say exactly when it got worse. She slept less, not because she had insomnia, but because she was afraid to sleep. I asked her what was wrong, but she said she was fine. Still, when we lay together, she'd suddenly get up and go into another room, returning only at dawn. She started having nightmares, but never told me what they were. One day, I lost my temper. You have to understand, I was just worried about my wife. From the lack of sleep, she started to look worse. Dark circles under her eyes, red eyes, pale skin. She lost weight, and every time I tried to help, she pushed me away. So I sat her down across from me and directly asked what she was dreaming about. She was silent for a long time, trembling and glancing at me furtively, as if she was afraid. And then, when tears began to roll down her cheeks, she whispered, "There's a man in my dreams. God, I'm scared, Tom." I went to hug her, and when I reached for her, she flinched, as if I'd frightened her. After that, things seemed to get better, or so I thought. How wrong I was. She used to ask how my day went, but now she just stared out the window. With each passing day, she spoke to me less and less, her words short and dry. And then she'd go to the bathroom or kitchen for some errands, closing the door behind her. And it wasn't just the silence, her eyes had changed. If before they were green, emerald-like, full of life and love, now her gaze made my spine go cold. There wasn't anger or hatred there. No, it was something closer to mistrust, wariness, as if she was seeing me for the first time. Over the next week, I began to feel anxious, a strange burning under my skin, as if something was wrong, but I couldn't tell where the crack was until I realized. She was studying me. When I drank coffee, I could feel her eyes on me. I'd look up and she'd immediately turn away, pretending to slice fruit, but her fingers trembled and the knife froze halfway to the board. I'd step outside for a smoke, and when I turned around, I'd see her peeking through the curtain, then she'd instantly close it. When I showered, I'd catch her watching me, studying my body. Then she'd run away. She started doing it even while I slept. She almost stopped talking to me, instead writing something in a notebook and hiding it as soon as I entered the room. Photos began to disappear from their frames. She'd talk on the phone with someone, but hang up the moment I came in. I made an appointment with a psychologist for us, but she refused and said she was afraid to be near me. It all happened so quickly. It seemed like just yesterday we were stargazing in each other's arms, and now this. The strangeness grew every day. Sometimes she asked me to sleep on the couch. I agreed, hoping it would calm her, but it was useless. Her paranoia only worsened. It got to the point where, when I tried to hug her, she screamed, "Don't come near me," and flinched as if I'd hit her. After one of those nights, I decided I had to find out what was really going on, even if it meant taking her to the doctor afterward. I pretended to be asleep when she stood in the doorway. Then she slowly approached soft, careful steps. She stopped at the foot of the bed, and for several seconds, there was a dead silence, broken only by her uneven breathing. I could feel her watching. Not just watching, comparing. That's when I became truly terrified. A cold dread twisting inside me as my wife became something I couldn't recognize. Then the bed shifted slightly down as she sat down on the edge. The air grew heavy. I could feel her stare physically, like pressure on my skin. Then her cold fingers gently touched my wrist, held it for a few seconds, then quickly let go, as if it burned, and whispered, "Pulse faster than Tom's." My heart clenched so hard I nearly twitched. She leaned closer. I could hear her breathing against my face, short, shaky. She smelled of lavender and something sour that made goosebumps crawl down my back. Her lips barely moved. I remember clearly. Tom had a small scar right there. She touched my cheek, but you don't. I clenched my teeth to keep from gasping. Those few seconds of silence lasted an eternity. What scar? I never had a scar on my cheek. I'd know if I did. I wanted to sink into the ground and scream all at once, but I kept lying still until I heard a choked sob and her fading footsteps. The door slammed. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding furiously. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, too afraid to close my eyes. In the morning, I went to work early, dreading the hours until my shift ended. That evening, over dinner, I said, "Kate, we need to talk." "What's going on?" She gripped her fork so tightly, her knuckles turned white, then looked me dead in the eye. "Tom, you've been acting strange." "What do you mean?" I don't know. Sometimes you look different. Sometimes your voice sounds wrong. You even smell different." I didn't know what to say. My head was chaos, and somehow I just laughed. "Kate, maybe you're just imagining things." "I don't know, Tom." My eyes fell on the knife rack. There was a clean strip of dust where the largest kitchen knife should have been, the one we use for everything. Bread, meat, anything. I distinctly remembered it being there before that night. My heart slammed into my throat with a primal panic. I looked at Kate, and she was staring right at me. I wanted to speak, but couldn't. It hit me then my wife might be planning to kill me. The next morning, she left for work, and like a caged animal, started searching the house. I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. I know I should have just left or taken her to a hospital, but she's my wife. I love her. She has to see that I am me. I tore through the apartment, frantic, desperate to find something, anything that would help me understand what was happening to her. And I did. After about an hour, in the back of the closet behind a pile of sweaters, I found her wooden box. Old, slightly cracked. The lid was ajar, and when I opened it, a thick notebook fell into my hands. It smelled of coffee and sweat. Her initials on the cover, written in her neat cursive. My heart froze as I realized it was the diary she had been hiding from me. The paper bent under my fingers, her handwriting familiar, but this time jagged, shaky, the page stained with what looked like tears. He's sleeping. I stand by the bed and watch. He looks like Tom, but he's not. Tom had a scar on his left hand from that accident by the river. This one's skin is smooth, He smiles, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. Something replaced him. I keep counting days, marking steps. If the real Tom, my husband, is alive, where is he? A wave of nausea rose in my throat. With each page, her handwriting grew more erratic. I tested his speech. He says, "I love you," in the same tone, but without warmth. Not like before. Tom smelled of vanilla, but this one smells of dust and cheap cologne. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My knees trembled. The air around me tightened like a noose. I flipped to the last page. I can't let this thing stay in our house. It wears his smile, his name. I tried talking to it, begging, but it just smiled and said all the right words. It didn't defend itself. Maybe because it isn't afraid? Its right hand twitches when it lies. I could have killed it today, but for some reason I couldn't. I know I have to. For Tom. I won't let some monster wear his skin. My hands were slick with sweat. My whole body was sweating, even though the room was cold. I placed the diary on the bed and sat down, trying to process everything I just read. An accident? God, she was exaggerating. All that came out of it was a concussion and some bruised ribs. I stayed in the hospital for about a week. Yeah, 7 days. Then my phone rang, making me jump. It was Sheriff Martin, a kind old man I'd known for years. "Tom, everything all right over there?" Catherine called. Said someone's living in your house pretending to be your husband. I froze. "What did you say?" "Says you're not you. I've known her for years, always seemed stable. Domestic quarrel, huh?" "No, just, stress. She's tired." Evening came slowly. I sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, looking at an old photograph, the one that used to sit on our mantle before all of this. Catherine and I sat by the lake, smiling, her arms around me. The sun so bright that day we had to squint. I stared at us, at the little details. Her blonde hair catching the lights, her hand around mine, the green shimmer in our eyes. It felt like a lifetime ago. When the door creaked open, I nearly jumped. My wife's, if I can even still call her that, steps were slow and tired, her bag thudding softly to the floor. She looked exhausted, her eyes red, her hair a mess. I stood, holding the diary. "Kate, we need to talk." She looked at me warily, like a trapped animal sensing a snare. "What's that in your hand?" Her voice was even, but something trembled in it. I found this. I need to understand what's happening," I said, showing her the diary. Catherine froze. For a moment, I thought she'd break down crying, but instead, she slowly stepped closer, looking straight into my face, her cold breath brushing against my skin. "So, what did you figure out, Tom? That I'm crazy? You think I've lost my mind, don't you?" "No. You wrote that I've been replaced. That I don't have a scar." She turned away, her lips pressed tightly. "Tom had one. We even joked it made him look tougher." "Listen, sweetheart." I took a step closer, a strange knot tightening in my gut. "I'm the same man. I remember everything. How we met, the candles at our wedding, how you laugh when we watch comedies, what you said about that stupid show when we finished it. I remember everything, Catherine. It's me." She stared at me, unblinking, her shoulders trembling as if she were freezing. I looked into her eyes, and there was something there. Pain and horror mixed together, as if I stood before her as someone both familiar and wrong. "You say it like you've rehearsed it," she whispered. "Because it's true." I stepped closer, my voice cracking into a shout. "What do I have to do for you to believe me? What?" Catherine said nothing, just breathed heavy, like she was finding herself, staring into my eyes. Then she suddenly backed away, step by step, toward her bag. I didn't realize what was happening at first. She bent down, as if for a handkerchief, and in the next moment, I saw the glint of metal. A knife. The missing one. Kate? I breathed, disbelieving. Catherine? Put it down. Stop. Stop pretending, you monster. I managed half a step toward her. She raised her hand. At first, I thought she was only threatening me. Panic tightened my fist. I wanted to yell, to grab her shoulders, to make her listen, but then a strike. Burning pain slashed through my chest. Everything went white. The last thing I saw was her face, so familiar, twisted by terror and despair at once. She stood over me, her hand trembling, her lips whispering something like, "Tom, where are you, my love?" And then everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital. At first, nothing but fog. Then the smell of antiseptic. The faint beep of a monitor. Unfamiliar voices. I tried to move my head. Pain shot through my body. The doctor explained I'd lost a lot of blood, but somehow survived. The knife missed my heart by an inch. Catherine had run away. I listened, not believing any of it was real. A couple of days later, Martin came by. I told him everything about the knife, the diary, her thinking I wasn't me. He listened, frowning, taking notes. When he finished and was about to leave, he turned back. "Didn't expect this from Catherine. Don't worry. We'll find her. When you're discharged, come by my place. I got some Cuban cigars from a friend. We'll relax a bit." Without thinking, I said, "I don't smoke." He frowned, about to say something, but then just nodded and left, closing the door behind him. For several minutes, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. Then I noticed a small mirror in the corner of the room. I looked at my reflection and froze. My face was pale, my lips dry. But that wasn't what caught my attention. Interesting. Can eyes change color from green to blue? I live alone, so who keeps writing messages on my mirror? I turned 18 in 2008, and on the day of my birthday, for reasons I won't bore you, I packed up my things and moved out. For 4 years, I lived in my car, working as a barista from 6 to 2 and as a line cook from 4 to 10. My plan was to work until I had enough money for my own place, and then to go to either college or get a more stable job. Looking back on it now, I don't know how I did it, but by 22, I'd saved up a decent sum of money and began my hunt for a semi-permanent place of residence. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and though housing prices weren't as bad as they are now, it was still a pricey county. After months of asking around, I was connected with Anders, an elderly man who was leasing a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in North Hollywood for far below market rate. The catch, because there's always a catch when it comes to affordable housing, was that the house had been terribly maintained. It had been unoccupied for a year. It would need some serious TLC before most people could comfortably reside in it. I, however, had been living out of my car for 4 years. As long as the place had running water, it would be an upgrade for me. I moved into the house in fall 2012. Anders gave me a tour before I settled in. He was a short, joyful old man, well, meaning, but how do I put this? Maybe not the most focused as a result of his age. At one point during the tour, he showed me the bathroom, then the master bedroom, then the bathroom again, then the master bedroom again. He was about to walk into the bathroom for a third time before I gently guided him down the hall. The house itself was livable but weathered. Dim lighting from outdated fixtures cast long shadows over peeling wallpaper. The ceiling in many of the rooms was discolored from past leaks. The faucet in the kitchen sink was broken, the bathtub was badly chipped, and a few of the cabinet handles fell off in my hand. It was a rundown place, located in a bars on the window kind of neighborhood, but still it was my place. I was smiling ear to ear when Anders gave me the keys. "It's a good house with you good bones. You take care of it now," he instructed, which I found ironic. Before he left, I paused in the front doorway, drawing a hand to his chin as he looked behind me into the house. I tried to follow his gaze, but couldn't figure out what he was looking at. "Everything all right?" "Yes, just that something looks different about that bathroom, though I can't put my finger on what." "Ah, well, it's a good house with good bones. You take care of it now." And with that, he gave me a nod and left me to my unpacking. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed living in a house. I didn't care how rundown the place was, just having an accessible bathroom and a full-size mattress to sleep on made me feel like a king. After I'd spent a few days cleaning the place up, I invited my sister and a fiance over for dinner. I'm sure it sounds stupid, but my newly acquired ability to host company made me proud. In no time at all, I'd comfortably settled into my new home. That evening, after saying goodbye to my guests, I took a shower. The bathroom lacked a traditional above-the-sink mirror. Instead, it had a wide, full-length mirror mounted on the wall to the left of the vanity. When I exited the shower and stepped up to the glass, raising a hand to wipe away the fog, I noticed something odd. In the condensation right at the eye level was the word "hi." I didn't know what to make of it. Somehow, the letters seemed intentional. It was hard to pass off as simply the way the steam had settled. My sister had been in the bathroom just before she left. Maybe she had written the word on the mirror with her fingertip, and the steam had only made the letters visible after my shower. I almost texted her about it, but the message seemed ridiculous when I typed it out. Paranoid, even. I wiped the mirror down and turned in for the night, and soon I forgot about it entirely. The following week, I received a promotion at one of my jobs. And while I was grateful for the additional income, my new position meant longer days. Additionally, I realized that a few of the house repairs were beyond my ability, and so I started outsourcing some of the work to contractors. It was annoying to only have the house to myself at night, but I didn't have another option with my busy schedule. Things were generally progressing smoothly, though every once in a while, in the middle of the night, I'd be awoken by a sound that I couldn't quite place. When I next noticed writing on my mirror, I'd been living at the house for a month. The second sighting occurred in much the same way as the first. I came back home after work and took a shower. When I pushed back the shower curtain, I looked at the glass and saw, written in the condensation, the words, "Staying long?" Now, I could pass 2 letters off as a coincidence, but 2 words, an entire question? That was no coincidence. Someone had been in my bathroom, and recently. I had contractors in and out of my house all the time, so one of them could have written the message, but why? I got dressed and put a hand on my bathroom doorknob and about to go back into my bedroom when it occurred to me that whoever had written that message might still be around. I slowly cracked open the door, peering down the dark hallway in one direction, then the other. I listened very carefully, but heard nothing. I walked around my house, which didn't take long given its size, and looked for anything out of place. All my doors were locked, all my windows were shut, and none of my personal items had been disturbed. If someone had broken into my house, they were long gone by the time I looked around. That second message put me on edge for days. I triple-checked that my windows and doors were locked each night. I looked in every potential hiding spot, of which there were very few in my little house, after I came home from work and before I went to sleep. And yet, though I was certain that my house was secure, I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. A month passed without incident. I'd almost started to feel at home in my new lodgings again until one Friday morning I awoke just past 3 a.m. I couldn't immediately tell what had woken me. Often, the house settled at night, creaking and groaning in ways that made me sound alive, but in that moment, the house was silent. It was only after I turned my head to the side that I realized that my bedroom door, which I was certain I had shut, was wide open. I stared down the hallway, feeling as though I were gazing into a black hole. The darkness was abyssal. I kept waiting for my eyes to adjust, waiting for them to pick out the familiar shapes of my home, but they never did. I couldn't see a thing. So why did I feel like something could see me? Like there was something in the house with me, just feet beyond the threshold to my bedroom, watching, waiting. Somehow I found the courage to rise from my bed and walk toward the door. When I made it to the handle, I grabbed it and slammed the door shut. I didn't investigate further. Didn't so much as stick my head out into the hall for a closer look. My bedroom door didn't have a lock. None of the doors except the bathroom did, so I dragged my bookcase in front of the door. It was a small bookcase, and an intruder could probably ram the door open anyway if they wanted to, but not before the sound alerted me. When morning came, I had to leave the house for work. I genuinely considered exiting my house through the window. I was almost late by the time I worked up the nerve to myself to look around the house before I left. As always, I found nothing amiss. After work, when I reluctantly returned home for the night, I ate a quick dinner and hopped in the shower. I remember standing in the tub for a long time, mulling over my predicament. I'd heard horror stories about people secretly living in other people's homes. Maybe I'd become a victim of a frog without even knowing. But if that was the case, then where the hell were they? There was nowhere to hide in that tiny house. I'd torn the place apart multiple times by then, checking every cabinet and closet. The inside of the house couldn't be accessed from the crawl space, and the air vents were too small for a person to fit in. Suddenly, I heard a click, so tiny that I'd almost missed it entirely. I tore back the shower curtain, gripping the shampoo bottle like I was about to bludgeon an intruder to death with it. As I'd come to expect, there was no one in the room, but there was a new message on the mirror. This one was bold, the easiest to read of any of the messages I'd received so far. It was 3 words long. I see you. Some awful amalgam of fear, confusion, and anger made my stomach churn. Ultimately, the latter emotion rose above the rest. I hastily dried off and threw on some clothes, then grabbed my phone from where I'd left it on the bathroom counter. I punched in Anders' number and glared at the damn mirror as I listened to the phone ring again and again. I had started to think it was too late for him to be awake when he suddenly picked up. He started to ask me how I was faring in my new lodgings before I cut him off. I need you to tell me if there's some way that a person could be getting into the house, I said. Every night, I check every window and door. I check every cupboard, closet, and cabinet, and still things are amiss. You need to let me know if there's some entry point that I'm not aware of. Anders didn't seem to entirely understand what I was asking. What's getting in? You let me know if you're having any rat troubles. My last tenant before you had some rat trouble sometimes. Yeah, sure, I've got rats besides the doors and the windows. How else could they be getting in? Well, there's the vents, of course. There was a chimney once, though we had it sealed up a good long while ago. And there's also the crawl space, of course, though I'm sure you've already poked around down there. Though I knew the home had a crawl space, I'd never had much reason to investigate it. I was never able to find the entrance, even after ripping up all the carpeting in the house. Likely, hardwood had been installed over the access door, making it an unlikely point of entry for an intruder. How do I get down to the crawl space? Yes, you should give the crawl space a gander. I barely stopped myself from smashing the phone into the counter. I plan to. Where can I find the entrance? That'll be on the floor of the bathroom closet. I looked around the room. Surely I'd misheard him. Either that or he was confused again. What? I know, it's an odd place for it, but it's only there because that room didn't always used to be a bathroom. The bathroom doesn't have a closet. Sure it does, just to the left of the vanity. I looked at the mirror, at that long, oversized mirror. I'd always found it odd for a bathroom of that size to have a built-in floor-to-ceiling mirror. What was it that Anders had said that when he first visited, that something had looked different about the bathroom? Setting my phone down next to the sink, I stepped up to close the glass. I spent a few moments feeling around the frame, looking for a latch. Then I grabbed a portion of the right side of the frame in 2 hands. After one hard yank, the mirror swung open like a door, revealing a large walk-in closet. Anders was saying something on the other end of the line, but I was too stunned to answer. There was a square-shaped hole at the back of the closet, which I assumed led down to the crawl space beneath the house. The closet floor was littered with all kinds of trash, filthy sheets, fast food containers, beer cans, and I realized some of my own items. Little things I thought I'd misplaced. A sock, a toothbrush, a comb, and a small framed photograph of me, my sister, and our old family dog. I crouched down to pick up the photo, perched in the doorway as I studied my younger, smiling self. I heard Anders saying my name over the phone, except the voice didn't sound much like Anders at all. It was too deep, too clear, too close. When I looked up, a man was peeking out at me from the hole in the floor. He smiled at me, his eyes wide and pupils blown, his smile so wide it looked painful, and his hair long and matted. He was only visible from the neck up, and the harsh lighting making it look like a disembodied head was grinning at me from the back of the closet. Horrified, I rose to my feet and ran. I didn't stop running until I made it to the car, which I promptly drove to my sister's house. The next day, I drove to the police station to file a report. An officer met me at the house to check the scene, and I showed him the hidden closet, which indeed had an entrance to the crawl space. My best guess was that the intruder was entering my crawl space from the small door on the side of my house. He'd likely been squatting in the house during the year in which it sat unoccupied, and when he saw it was being prepared for sale, he disguised the closet door so to keep a little room for himself. Why he decided to stay or why he was leaving me messages, I can't say. From his actions and from what little I saw of him, I think it's safe to assume that he wasn't of sound mind. Unfortunately, the man was never found. For all I know, he's still in that same neighborhood. Hell, he might even be in that same house. I moved across the county afterwards and have lived in studio apartments ever since. The thought of living in a big house with all those rooms and corners and places to hide gives me the creeps. It's not just houses that the incident soured for me, but mirrors as well. These days, when I visit a friend or stay at a hotel, I always have to carefully inspect the bathroom mirrors, shining a light directly into their faces and tapping a finger against the glass. Because the worst detail of the whole ordeal was that, when revisiting the bathroom with the police officer, I stepped into the old closet, closed the door, and looked into the mirror. Instead of the mirror backing, I saw the officer's face on the other side of the glass. And alright, guys. Something weird has been happening on my roof. Advice is welcome. Okay, just a little bit of backstory. At my childhood home, I was certain there was someone who hung out on the roof of our addition at night and watched me through my bedroom window. It was too dark out there to see for sure, and I was too afraid to shine a flashlight, but I could hear them sometimes, and would see flashes of light almost like they were taking pictures. My mom thought I was nuts until one day she said that the furniture on the deck of the addition was moved in a way so that someone could climb up on the roof when she came downstairs in the morning. She still didn't do anything except put blinds on my windows because she's the type of person that never addresses issues and pretends like everything is always fine. Now flash forward to now. I am 28 years old and my sister and I own a house together. We bought it last year and we live in a kind of a shady area, but it's a nice house. We have a huge kitchen addition on our house, but it is the only 1 story tall and there's a flat roof above it. The roof leads up to the windows of my sister's bedroom and a shared bathroom. The house has 3 people living in the house, my sister, myself, and my good friend. We are all girls in our 20s. One day we looked outside and on the roof, visible from the bathroom window, was a piece of fried chicken. It was very odd and out of place, and I made a mental note that we'd need to climb out the window and grab it so that animals did not migrate to the roof. We had recently had a party and chicken was served, so I figured some asshole threw their piece on the roof, whatever. Next day I go in and it's gone. Okay, weird, but maybe a bird took it. A few weeks later I noticed there is another bone on the roof. This time it is a hip bone of a larger animal, maybe a deer. It is very odd, but I made a mental note to grab it off. Didn't have time at the time, and the next day when I went up to get it, it was gone. I found it in the yard when I went to rake up some leaves that were left over after the winter. Weird again, but whatever. So it got really weird today. Today I went into the bathroom and there was a large jug of fruit punch sitting on the roof of the addition. The weirdest part is it's not full of fruit punch, it appears to be pee. It is also open, so if it were thrown onto the roof, I would assume that physics would cause the pee to fall out, and the pee is very much still in it. I took a picture. I don't have a picture of the other things, but I am being as truthful as I possibly can about them. And she links a picture. I will blur the picture of pee because I don't know how YouTube feels about that. And yeah, there's a picture or just a jug of something on the roof. Very weird. Not sure if I should try to set up a camera to see if someone is hanging out on the roof. Not sure if I am just paranoid about it because of my former events in my life. Any advice would be welcome. I have a small camera that I could possibly try to set up, but it is not waterproof, and I'm not sure how good the night vision works on it. It is a dash cam / nanny cam, and I bought it to set up in my room because of the... Someone else says, probably just your run-of-the-mill crackhead. And then the OP gives us an update, saying, I found out who has been lurking on my roof, watching us bathe. The OP then reads, today my roommate was showering and she heard something on the roof. She got out of the shower, and as she did, she saw a face staring directly at her through the screen of the window. She looked and saw this little guy. And this little guy ended up being a raccoon. So they were right about the raccoon, and you can see a raccoon's head peeking up through the window. And yeah, cute little raccoon. And then she continues saying, so she was just able to catch a pig before he scampered away. We just added extra lights to the bathroom, which I think was the reason we never saw him before. I guess my past had me thinking the worst. The container was probably just filled with gross garbage juice and not pee, since raccoons sometimes in a national park. I posted this story in a thread on Nature Pics subreddit and was told I should post it somewhere like this. I was camping in the middle of nowhere in Washington near Mount Rainier. Like not an official campground, just way out in the forest where I wouldn't have expected another human for miles. One night I wake up and hear something. Open my tent, and there's a guy sitting by where my fire had been right outside my tent. Nothing particularly noteworthy about the guy, just a fairly regular looking dude just sitting there a couple feet away from my tent. No bag or pack or anything with him, just a guy. He saw me open the tent, his eyes got huge like he'd just seen a ghost, and he took off. It shook me up pretty badly, but over the next day I managed to put it out of my mind fairly well, after writing it off as just some odd occurrence and a guy that was probably high or something, and I managed to set up a camp coincidentally not far from mine. Then 2 days after that, in 10 to 15 miles away in totally random directions that nobody could take the same path as on accident, I was sitting by the fire that night and started hearing noises that I got more and more convinced were a person. I called out to them, and out of the darkness someone was like, "Do you know how to get to Bell's Canyon?" I said, "No, I don't even think that's a real place there." They kept talking from just out of my line of vision. I tried to see them with my flashlight, but they yelled, "Aim that away," and kind of spooked and not wanting to piss off a potentially crazy person, I did. After like 15 minutes of me being freaked out and them talking and asking completely random questions from the darkness, it sounded like the voice had gotten closer, so I shined my light that way again. And it was the same dude who had been outside my tent 2 nights before. He had to have followed me almost 15 miles over 2 days because there's no way he could have just accidentally wound up in the same spot as vast as the wilderness is. No possible way. As soon as my light hit him, he took off again. I started to chase him, but I didn't want to get lost in the wilderness in the dark, so I stopped quickly after probably only 100 to 200 feet. This one could have been written off because the only way he could have been in both places is specifically if he was following me. I really can't describe how terrifying it was to feel like I was being hunted through the woods, and to actually have to brainstorm on things I could do to best avoid potentially being murdered. On the first night of hiking out, twice I heard what sounded like a person walking circles outside my tent. But by the time I mustered the courage to look, nobody was there. On the second night, I heard what I thought was an animal making noises at first in the distance, but slowly decided sounded like more like a human making animal calls. But it could have actually been an animal, but I didn't actually see the guy again. But it really sounded like a person making howling noises. I literally almost cried when I finally got back to my car. The relief was so strong. To this day, it was probably the most terrifying experience I've ever had. I have no idea who the guy was or what his intentions were, and no way of getting an explanation. But I can't really articulate just what a terrifying few days it was. My experience in the woods. So this was told to me by an old family friend, Nikki, numerous times as a kid growing up, as one of those life advice stories to keep in mind through the years. And to her credit, I've never forgotten it. Whenever anything associated with hitchhiking comes up, it always springs to mind, and probably always will. Makes me a bit ill whenever I think about it actually. So Nikki, who grew up at the same time as my dad, so this was about early 80s I believe, was a young woman in her mid-20s. She's one of those real, kind-hearted souls, always willing to help another out in a time of need, you know? And I can't imagine her being anything other than that when she was younger. So I totally see her doing this too. So, driving into the city, about a 2-hour or so drive out from town, she saw a man walking down the side of the road. As she neared, he turned and, in typical hitchhiker manner, stuck out the old arm and thumb. Nikki, bless her heart, pulled over and asked him if he needed any help. She told me that he was really polite, if not a bit shy. When he asked for a lift into the city, Nikki gave a smile and popped open the passenger door for the guy, who tossed his bag into the back seat and buckled up for the ride ahead. They talked pleasantly for most of the trip, about friends, the news, etc., happy small talk. She felt that they were getting on really well, and even bought him dinner at the pit stop a little over halfway there. She says he seemed really flustered and awkward when she paid, but one of the things they had talked about was money and how he was pretty dang strapped for cash, which was why he was hitchhiking in the first place. But he eventually relented and they went on their way. As soon as they got into the city, he thanked her profusely for the ride and the food and asked to be dropped off once they hit downtown. Before getting out, he asked for Nikki's phone number so he could contact her someday and catch up. Thrilled at the prospect of knowing how her new friend was faring, Nikki wrote it down for him, and drove off with the warm feeling of a good deed done. Now, I'm sorry if you were expecting something creepy to have happened by now, but I think this is what freaked me out so much as a kid. How nice everything seemed to have worked out. Nikki gets this crease in her forehead and a funny look in her eye when she tells me the next part. How a week later, she got a phone call from her driving buddy. He didn't let her get a word in edgewise after hello and told her that she should thank God that she was raised so nice. Because when he first got in her car, he was planning on R-wording and murdering her once they got to the pit stop. That he was going to steal that car and dump her body in a ditch further down the road and go on his merry way. But after she talked with him so kindly and treated him to a dinner with a smile on her face, he couldn't bring himself to do it. He didn't think that he could live with himself after doing that to such a nice lady. And to please, Nikki, please, never, ever pick up another hitchhiker. Then he hung up the phone. Nikki never got a call from him again. When she tried redialing the number, she got a payphone. And so, Mr. Hitchhiker, I know I'm never going to meet you because I'm going to listen to the advice you gave your driving buddy and never, ever. Long enough already, so let's get into some unexplainable stories from Reddit. I'm a nurse for the elderly. One of the patients made a terrifying confession. Despite what some might tell you, it's not actually so bad to work in this field. Sure, some of the elderly can be difficult times, and like any other job, this one has its stomach-churning moments, but most of them are sweethearts. All it takes is some compassion and patience to break through to them. So yeah, I mostly love this job. I wouldn't give it up if I could help it. The only part I don't like are the occasional confessions from some of the patients. They say that people can feel their ends nearing, and after a few years working this job, I've come to believe that. Some of them have no one else, no family or friends left, so they air their dirty laundry, so to say, in front of us nurses. Most of the time it's pretty mild stuff. Old Gregory cheated on his wife in their 30s, Larry used to be into hardcore BDSM, Lisa stole from her company for a while, stuff you don't necessarily expect, but that doesn't surprise you in hindsight. Other times it borders on disturbing. Jenkins had a bar fight and ran away, and to this day he's not sure if the other guy survived. Sasha had an abortion on her own without telling her boyfriend at the time that she was even pregnant. Sierra abandoned her family, running away in the night to start a new life, and seeing the missing person posters ate her up inside. That's the kind of stuff that gets under my skin, but I can at least understand where they're coming from. I can sympathize, even if I don't condone their actions. But then there are the monsters, the ones that have completely, truly atrocious deeds, and their confessions keep me up at night. Julia, the sweetest old lady you'd ever meet, gaslit her husband into S-word to cash out his life insurance. Freddie helped burn an entire village back in the Vietnam War, basking in the flames and the screams of the dying. Sally abused her child growing up to the point it would cause a myriad of developmental problems. Mind you, I haven't been there myself for all of those confessions. Us nurses tend to share, morbid as it might sound. Go ahead and judge if you want, but we don't ask for those burdens to be placed on our shoulders, and we'll seek relief wherever we can find it. Most of the time it's just innocent gossip. The "you won't believe what Gus used to do when he was his young" type. Other times there are tears and silent cries in the break room, stone cold expressions, and a pressing atmosphere. Not a hint of levity to go around. But such is life in this field. Most of us have learned to live with it, and those who couldn't walked away. I myself am in the first camp, and I don't think last night will change my mind. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. You need some context in order to make heads or tails of this. It all started with Parker, so I should too. He's a bitter old man. No way to sugarcoat it. A tough nut to crack. Rage and hatred for everyone and everything simmering under the surface at all times. He's the type of person that won't be satisfied until your parade is soaked to the bone in rain. He's been here since before I was hired, so the other nurses warned me about him from day one. God help you if you have to interact with him. He can ruin your entire week just by opening his mouth, they told me. I didn't take them seriously, thinking he couldn't be that bad. Spoiler alert, he was, but not in the ways you'd expect. He didn't get physically violent like some of the other elderly. He didn't fling shit and piss-soaked diapers at us. He flung words, but he knew how to make them cut, and cut deep. Our first interaction happened when I had to check up on him and make sure he took his medicine. It was a nice evening and I found old man Parker in his room, lounging in his recliner. He faced towards the window, back to the door, and he didn't even bother around to look at me when I entered. "Good evening, Mr. Parker," I greeted. "Hey, fresh meat," he spat a response laced with spite. I gritted my teeth and tried to sound polite when I answered. "My name is Jessica, but—" "Fresh meat," he interrupted me. "You won't last a month, so I won't bother learning your name. Now why are you here, fresh meat?" I told him why, and he pointed at the empty pill bottle on the nightstand next to him. Then he returned to staring out the window at the sunset without another word, so I took my leave. This was how the first 3 weeks went by. I went over to his room for this or that. He made some snide remarks to insult me, and I held my tongue. It was clear he didn't want anyone around, especially me. But I was never a quitter, and it wasn't about to bend the knee to some old fart with a vendetta against happiness itself. "You still there?" he asked on the 4th week when I passed by his room to change his bedding. "My God, woman, you're about as smart as you are pretty." He was in his recliner again. Most of his evenings and nights were spent there, but by the day he'd be outside, or in the common area, terrorizing everyone he happened upon. But as soon as dusk approached, he'd retreat to his room and peer out the window until he fell asleep in the recliner. I ignored his remark, approaching the bed with a fresh set of sheets and pillowcases. "What? Did you swallow your tongue? Forget how words work?" He kept pestering me. I took off the old sheet and discarded it on the floor, even though it wasn't all that dirty. That wouldn't be a big surprise. Honestly, the only thing surprising me is that you learned to speak in the first place. Now, I don't recommend doing what I did, reacting like I had. At that point, I should have thrown in the towel and walked away, but I didn't. After 2 weeks of abuse like that on a daily, I snapped. I threw the fresh sheets haphazardly on the bed and stomped over to his recliner. "Listen here, you shriveled up ballsack," I went off on him. "I don't know what your problem is, but I don't need this kind of treatment in my life. I'm not surprised that your family left you. With an attitude like that, I'd have dropped you off at a care home first chance I got as well." I hurled insult after insult at him, digging deep to dredge out the nasty side of me, fully expecting Parker to go off on me in return, but instead he stood there and took it all. With each colorful word leaving my mouth, the corners of his lips pulled a little further up into a satisfied grin. I only stopped when I ran out of breath, and he waited a moment to make sure I was done. "What did you say your name was again?" he asked. "Jessica." "Jessica," he repeated, letting each letter roll off his tongue. "Tell you what, I like you." And that was that. He returned to staring out the window, and I was able to carry out my work in peace. I regretted the outburst for a while, feared that it would somehow come back to bite me in the ass and get me fired, but Parker didn't tell anyone. It was our little secret. Every day after that, he'd grin when he saw me. He still gave me lip, but it was different, more jovial, not trying to insult me and drive me away, just to tease me. But I could work with him without breaking down into tears afterwards, so I took my win. After a while, I started teasing him back. He'd call me his insult of the day, I called him mine, we'd laugh it off and move on. What I'm trying to say is that we developed this weird bond, and I actually started having fun. I started looking forward to it. We didn't talk about anything else. I didn't know the first thing about him, and he didn't know the first thing about me, but in my eyes, that only added to the charm. Life moved on, and before I noticed, I'd been working there for years. Rumors about Parker abounded. Everyone had their theories and beliefs, but I couldn't confirm or deny any of them. The man was still as much of a mystery to me as he'd been on the first day. Then one day, about a month ago, things started to change. He'd make less comments. He spent more and more time in his room, isolating from everyone. Parker had always been very self-sufficient for someone his age, but he started needing help with things, and I could see it killed him on the inside. I didn't mind. This was what I was getting paid for. But the man had his pride. He refused to be seen by a medic and get treatment, so we all expected him to kick the bucket soon. A prospect that made most everyone in that care home happy, but I for one dreaded it. Even so, I knew better than to try and talk to him about it. One evening before I went home, I checked on him. Parker was in his usual spot in the recliner, drapes drawn aside and window wide open. The sun was already gone, sunken below the horizon, painting it red as night creeped in. He didn't acknowledge my presence, not until I stopped next to him. "Hey, Jessica," he greeted, his voice a low rumble. I nearly went for a "hey, fartbone," but the sound of my name and the way that he said it gave me pause. For the first time in the many years I'd known him, he sounded serious for once. A pit of dread formed in my stomach. "Everything all right, Mr. Parker?" His lips curled at the corners, pulling his gaunt face into a smile. A dry, raspy chuckle left his throat, but he let me question linger in the air for a moment. "Going home for the night?" he asked. "Yes." "Could you stay just for a little while longer?" "Of course." I knew what this meant. Parker felt his time was coming, and he wanted someone next to him. I leaned in to take his hand into mine, but a bastard will be a bastard to the very end. He slapped my hand away, so we stood there in awkward silence, watching the night settle outside. "You're the closest things I have to a friend, Jessica," he said out of the blue. "The closest thing I have to a family." He let out another chuckle, but it sounded sad. God, I'm so pathetic. I put a hand on his shoulder, and this time he didn't slap it away. I had no idea what exactly to say. Parker wasn't one for sappy speeches, so in the end I went with the truth. Blunt as it was, I figured he'd appreciate my honest opinion. "It's your fault for being a grumpy old fart. You could have had many friends here. So why?" "Do you have any plans tonight?" he asked, and I nodded a no. "Then, can I answer your question with a story?" "Sure." He shifted in the recliner, biding his time as he searched for the right words. I'd seen it all before in others. They think themselves ready to open up until the time comes to actually do it. With a sigh, he resigned himself to the situation and started speaking. Parker was born in a small town in the 1940s, right off the back of the Second World War. He had an older brother and a father, neither of which he remembers. The first died of some disease as a child, and the second got drafted and died overseas while Parker was still a baby. That left his mother alone to raise him. But they weren't the only ones struggling to make ends meet in the town. Most everyone else did too. Life back then was harsh, especially for isolated communities like theirs. But I had a decent enough childhood, Parker assured me. My mother did her best, working herself to the bone and going hungry most nights to make sure I wouldn't. He took a short pause, prying his gaze away from the window to make eye contact with me. I could tell he was uncomfortable. Dwelling on the past brought him a great deal of anguish, but he looked away from me after a long moment, back at the dark world outside, and continued speaking. Despite his mother's best efforts, his childhood was short-lived. Parker had to grow up fast, to become dependable, to help around the house and find work. It wasn't that uncommon back then. Kids as young as 8 or 9 worked shoulder to shoulder with the adults. We didn't have much of a choice. Things such as getting an education or waiting until they were adults, those were little more than pipe dreams, but luckily Parker was big for someone his age. At only 10, he was taller and stronger than his 15-year-old friends. He could handle his manual labor, and having an extra set of hands to go around, a second breadwinner, did wonders for their household. "I still remember getting my first ever pay," he said with a sad smile. A small sum, but I was proud. Mother wanted me to spend it on myself to get something nice, but I didn't. I bought a sack of flour for her to make bread out of, and I used the fabric to make myself a new pair of shorts. I'm so sorry," I stuttered. "Yeah, me too." But time went on. Parker kept working throughout the years, living life one day at a time. Trouble was never far off, but he faced it head on. The adults always tried to shortchange him for his work, and other kids tried to bully him out of his meager earnings regularly. The first time that happened, I came home empty-handed with a broken nose and a busted lip, he said bitterly. 5 of them ganged up on me. It was a dog-eat-dog world back then. When he was about 13 and his mother brought home a new man, Parker hoped for a change. A chance for him to have a father, a role model, someone to teach him how to be a man himself. He thought life would get easier. How wrong I was, he said. That man was an alcoholic abuser. Parker and his mother found out as much soon enough. her sooner than him, but he saw the signs. Even though he still worked and brought his earnings home, food was suddenly in short supply. His mother always had bruises she tried to hide, and his stepfather was always drunk. When I returned home beaten up again by the older kids, I was hopeful for once. I thought I'd go out there and do something about it. And he didn't? I asked with hesitation. Parker huffed. He beat me up as well for being a sissy. In his own words, "It better not happen again, you hear me?" He said that the next time I come home empty-handed, he'd show me real hell. Why didn't you run away or get the authorities involved? Run away? Where to? Parker answered. The authorities didn't give a shit. He kept enduring the abuse for the sake of his mother. Couldn't leave her all alone with the stepfather, and it escalated gradually. Soon enough, his stepfather would take Parker's money outright, then he'd beat his mother out in the open. It wasn't long until he raised his hand at me on the regular, Parker said, but it kept my mother safe, so I endured it. On the nights I'd get beaten up, she was safe. And those nights only got more common as time went on. At first, Parker would get beaten up for stepping in, taking the place of his mother, then he'd get beaten up for not bringing enough money home, and then for no reason at all. At some point, I couldn't take it anymore. I snapped, Parker admitted. The other kid stole my money again, and I was afraid to go home that night, afraid of what he'd do to me. So I ran off into the woods, looking for a place to sleep, and instead I found this old well. Old well? I asked, not sure what it had to do with anything up to that point. Old well, Parker confirmed. You know, a hole in the ground for people to get drinking water? Yeah, I know what a well is. At any rate, he found this old well, a dilapidated thing, long out of use and in serious disrepair. Parker nearly fell down into it when he leaned over the edge to peer down. He threw a pebble into it, and it never landed. Then he tried spitting into it and yelling down into the shaft. It echoed for a long time, much longer than it should have. Parker listened in awe as his own voice reverberated from the well for minutes on end, not getting any fainter, but awe inside. It gave him the idea. I didn't like the sound of that. I did end up returning home that night, Parker said. Found him beating up my mother since I wasn't there, and he chased me when he saw me. Parker led his stepfather out of the town and into the woods, farther away from civilization, deeper and deeper between the trees, until he heard the faint echo of the well still calling out. I hid nearby and kept quiet, he said, waited for him to find the well, and he did. He heard the echoes of my scream and thought I fell down into the damn thing trying to hide. The asshole laughed about it. His stepfather approached the well and leaned over the edge, still laughing. "Did you learn your lesson yet, you damn bastard?" Parker imitated him. Little did he know that I did. It just wasn't the lesson he wanted me to learn. Parker burst out from his hiding place while his stepfather was distracted and ran up at him. All it took was a single push, he said grimly. A single push. And he tumbled over the edge. Fell into the abyss head first, screaming all the way to the bottom. From that day onward, the echo of his voice joined mine in that well. The authorities pretended to search for him for a few days, but no one truly gave a shit. He was just an alcoholic bastard, so everyone thought he'd gotten his comeuppance. That he died in a ditch somewhere or he ran away in search of greener pastures and other people to terrorize. No one suspected us, Parker said. Not my mother, who was too weak to fight back, and they considered me just a kid. No way in their eyes for either one of us to kill an adult man. With him out of the picture, though, Parker's life improved somewhat. He still earned a pittance, and the other kids still bullied him, but at least he could rest easy in his own home. I went to that well every day at first, then every other day, then once a week at most, but the screams never stopped. Day and night. They got fainter, barely a whisper in the wind, but I could still hear them. Didn't it scare you? It terrified me, Parker admitted, but I also saw the possibilities. That answer terrified me. I contemplated for a moment to call it a night to put an end to Parker's confession and leave, but I was also curious, for better or for worse. Next up were the kids that bullied me, Parker continued. It took me a long time to build up the courage to even consider it, but enough abuse will push reasonable men to do unreasonable actions. The gang was 5 members strong, their leader 19 years old and the youngest about Parker's age. The rest were all in between. Starving street urchins, Parker called them. either orphans or with home lives similar to his own that pushed them to run away and brave the world. Except they were lazy, Parker said. They took the easy way out, stealing, conning, bullying other kids like they did to me. The community wasn't happy with them, but they never targeted adults, so they were tolerated until they beat up Parker for the 100th time and he decided he'd had enough. I only wanted to get rid of their leader, he said. Thought their little clique would break apart without him, but I couldn't separate them. Parker tried to challenge him to a one-on-one fight outside of town, but he came with the rest of his gang and he was pissed. You could see the bloodlust in his eyes from a mile away. I knew they'd give me hell like never before, so I had no choice. All 5 of them had to go. Parker ran away, and just like his stepfather, they chased him into the woods. He hid near the well again, and when they got closer to inspect the echoing voices, Parker repeated his earlier stunt. "I pushed the older boy first," he said, in a stone-cold voice. Then, before the others had a chance to wise up, I pushed the second oldest as well. The others were smaller. I could take them. They tried to run away, to escape with their lives, but I couldn't let them. Parker chased them down, and he caught up to the youngest first. He tripped the boy from behind and stomped on his knee to break it, then kept going. The second one he grabbed by the shoulders and swung into the tree head first, breaking his neck. I tackled the last one and got him into a chokehold. He kicked his legs, clawed at my arm, tried to bite me a few times. When he realized he couldn't break free, he started pleading, begging for his life. Told me he wouldn't speak a single word about what happened here. He begged like that all the way to the well, until his legs were over the edge. The boy with the broken neck followed, and the one with the broken leg dragged himself quite the distance by the time Parker got to him. But he went through with it, and that night, the well gained 5 more voices. Parker stopped his retelling for a moment and stared off into the distance. At first I thought he was either giving me a breather, a bit of time to process what I heard, or that he was searching for words. I looked outside as well, and the silhouette of a tree against the starry night sky shook in the distance. A reverberating scream followed. "We don't have much time left. I have to hurry up," Parker whispered. I was frozen by his side as he picked the story back up, in shock and fear, not knowing what was about to go down or what I should do. I'd witnessed a few confessions by that point, but none came even close to Parker's. He confessed to 6 murders in just as many minutes, and I was sure there'd be a few more by the time he'd be done with me. The guilt ate me up inside, he confessed. I went by the well every single day, fighting back the urge to jump into it myself. No one missed those kids, and no one in the community blamed Parker. He wasn't the only one getting bullied by then, and on some level, everyone was glad they were gone. One less problem in their lives. So they were happy to pretend the 5 ran off somewhere to carry out bigger heists. I was depressed for years because of it, but I kept telling myself that I had to do it, that my life was better now. Lies I only half believed. But they got me out of bed in the morning. Another tree shook outside, closer to us, but there wasn't a scream this time. Parker flinched visibly. Anyway, the years flew by. People kept leaving the small town, flocking to big cities in search of work. I was one of them. I found this wonderful girl, and I left with her. They took Parker's mother as well, and the 3 of them found work at some factory or another. And for a few years, he thought he'd left the small town and his horrible deeds behind. Until I started hearing screams in the night. Voices I recognized. I thought I was imagining it at first. I tried to convince myself it was nothing more than me just going insane with guilt. Another tree shook outside, followed by a howl. And let me guess. It was all too real. Parker nodded his head. My mother went missing one evening, and we never found her. The big city police took it a bit more seriously, but they couldn't dig up a single lead. No witnesses, no suspects, nothing. But Parker knew exactly where to find her, or what was left of her. After a long trip back to his hometown and a trek through the woods, his worst fears were confirmed. His mother's voice joined the torturous chorus in the well. I broke down right then and there, cried in that forest by myself all night long. It was supposed to be me, not her. He returned home though, if only for the sake of his girlfriend and soon-to-be wife. She was pregnant. They'd soon have their first child, and Parker wanted a better life for them than he'd had growing up. He'd be there for his kids, there for his wife, there to make sure they'd be alright. They got married with little fanfare, few friends, and even fewer family members for a proper wedding, and their child was born a couple of months later. The most beautiful baby girl in the world, Parker explained with a glint in his eyes. Holding her, hearing her crying, it was all I ever wanted, enough to justify everything I'd done and been through in a heartbeat. Another tree shook outside, and something took contour in the underbrush at the edge of the property. I let out a yelp, and Parker reached for me. He grabbed my forearm and held me steady as I tried to back away. "We still have a few minutes," he said calmly. "And don't worry, it's not here for you. You're safe." He proceeded with the rest of his story, and I had to try my damned hardest to divide my attention between him and whatever was out there. I treasured every moment and with my wife and daughter, but you know how these things go. She grew up in a heartbeat. Before I realized it, she spoke her first words, took her first steps, moments I couldn't be prouder of as a father. The thing bellowed, a guttural sound that rattled my bones. Dying animal was my first thought. A coyote getting murdered or a fox going into heat. It took a step forward into the faint circle of light surrounding the care home, and I saw a human face. Then another one. And another one, contorted in agony and held together to form a gigantic head. Then that thing returned once more, Parker said, raising a hand to point at the advancing beast. More cries in the night, more screams and howls. I knew what it wanted, but I couldn't let it have me or my family. Another step brought its neck and torso into view, pulsing muscles crisscrossing each other at random, skin stretched as though it pulled taut, dozens of human arms jutting out of it in the most random places. Its myriad of eyes moved every which way, scanning, searching. I knew I had to do something before it was too late, to either get rid of it or appease it, and I knew what it wanted. "What?" I asked, stuttering and shaking with fear. "People. Bodies. Victims," Parker answered. "More of them." I opened up its appetite, and now it was hungry. If I didn't give it what it wanted, it would get itself. Take my world from me. I didn't want it to do it. I tried to talk myself out of it until the very last moment, but I was so pressed for time and worried sick for my family, so I went back to the town. For a moment, I wished my eyes could do the same thing the creatures did. I wanted to turn and look at Parker to see his face, but I didn't dare take my eyes off of it. Every last muscle in my body was clenched, holding me in place. I was barely able to breathe. It took another step forward, and all of those dead, beady eyes focused, every last one of them pinned on the window, on the room, on me and Parker. I kidnapped someone," Parker said, his voice fraying into a cry at the edges. "An older man living all by himself. I knew him, knew he'd been a widower for decades. He knew me. He barely fought back as I tied and gagged him. I expected him to plead as well like the kids had. I expected him to fight me, but the silence, it was worse somehow." "Did he know about that thing?" I managed to push out a question. "What? No, of course not," Parker answered. "He was just old and frail. And he knew he couldn't do anything to stop me. Maybe he'd given up on life long ago, like I ended up doing. I don't know." The rest of the monster came into view as it advanced towards the open window, and there was so much more of it than I expected. So many legs moving haphazardly, slapping the lawn at awkward angles to pull the body along. It felt surreal, like the window was a screen and I was merely watching some cheap horror movie with even cheaper special effects. At night, I dragged the old man out of town and through the woods. I got him into the well, said a short prayer for his soul, and tipped him over the edge. He went down without a sound. The monster stopped a few feet away from the window and craned its head forward. By that point, I was pretty much useless, more of an ornament than an active participant. Parker let go of me and moved to get up, failing twice. His old bones were all out of strength. But he still had his determination. The third attempt saw him to his feet, even if a bit wobbly. "I returned to my wife and daughter after that," he said, taking a step towards the window, "and all was fine for a while. Seeing her smile growing up, having her by my side, it kept the guilt at bay. She was my world, and I was ready to do anything to keep my world from crumbling." The monster cooed. One of its many faces moved along its skin, pushing against the rest until it got to the forefront. A wide smile took over its lips, replacing the agonized expression. The next time the screams returned, I knew what I had to do. Knew what the rest of my life would be like, what sins I had to commit. Every few years I'd return to that cursed town, kidnap someone in the dead of night, and throw them into the well. The smile on the face at the forefront only grew wider, but the rest didn't match. They started whispering aggressively, their voices merging as they got louder. I kept at it until my daughter grew up, until she found a boy she wanted to marry and moved out, until everyone left that town behind to be an empty shell for the force to retake. And I called it a job well done. I thought my daughter was safe and I could finally let the monster take me, that I'd finally atoned for all of my sins. Parker closed the gap to the window, and so did the monster. It pushed its many arms into the room, hands both big and small, grasping at the air as they tried to reach him. And what happened to her, I asked. The question felt strange coming up out of my throat and leaving my mouth, like it was uttered by someone a million miles away, completely detached from the situation. Parker extended one of his arms, but paused and turned to face me. "What do you think happened, Jessica?" he asked in a somber voice. "What do you think pushed me on the run for the rest of my life? Made me grow wary of approaching people and making friends?" I held back the answer, if only because I had one more question. "Why tell me all of this?" Parker smirked, the same mischievous, shit-eating grin I'd gotten used to from him. "'Cause I'm a selfish old bastard," he said matter-of-factly. "I wanted at least one person to know and maybe miss me, and now you do." He took the final step that brought him within the monster's reach, and I got a hold of his arm with 100 fingers. The many eyes looked past Parker directly at me. "Thank you, Jessica," Parker said, his back to me. "You can leave now. That would be the best." I didn't argue with him on that. I slowly walked backwards towards the door. My head was heavy, mind spinning, and my legs felt like unsteady stilts 100 feet long. But I did it. I reached the door, backed out into the corridor, and closed it gently. Parker watched me the whole time, a peaceful smile on his lips until the latch clicked. The rest of the night was a blur. I wandered to the break room with tears streaming down my face, but I didn't even realize I was crying until I tried to light a cigarette and a tear fell on it. My hand shook like an earthquake, as did the rest of me. I smoked about half the pack, waiting and praying for the thing to leave so I could too. A couple of hours later, I finally built up the courage to bolt it out of the care home into my car. I drove home in a haze, eyes starting at every little movement, and I didn't manage to sleep a wink until the break of dawn. But I returned to the care home for my next shift, looking like a ghost. Police were there, interrogating everyone about Parker's disappearance, and I lied to them. Couldn't possibly tell them the truth. Not when I didn't know where the damn thing well is. So yeah, I lied until they left me alone. I lied until they packed in their car and drove off. Everyone else is awfully happy that Parker's gone, and I stand out among them like a sore thumb. Sitting in his recliner, writhing as the sunset approaches, I realized he was right on both accounts. He was a selfish old bastard, and he left behind someone who misses him. Be Me, U.S. Marine stationed in Okinawa, Japan. For those of you who don't know, Okinawa is an island south of Japan, literally covered in U.S. military bases. Be stationed on the smallest MC base on island, sleepy little base called Camp Courtney. Get put on a temporary base security detail. Get a job as corporal of the guard. Basically just sit in a little guard shack with an office and a TV watching a radio. And if anything goes wrong, you go take care of it. Quiet Thursday night on duty. Pissing rain, sucking wind, thunder, lightning, etc. Get a call from a sentry on post about a young girl dressed as a walk-in into the jungle by the gate. What the fuck? Immediately assumed it's something weird. Duh. Get my Beretta, pepper spray, flashlight, radio, etc. It's raining even harder. Walk to the area where this girl was spotted. I should explain that Okinawa was where the final and one of the bloodiest battles of World War II took place, and hundreds, if not thousands, of civilians were killed, so I already assumed it was a ghost or some shit. Get to the gate. Fucking soaked. Talk to the sentry about what he saw. "I don't know, man. It was a short local girl in white. She looked like a nurse. She went down that trail along the gate." I already knew that the trail led to those tombs. For those of you who aren't familiar, in Japan, there are those big tombs everywhere, and it's extremely disrespectful to trespass. People say you'll be cursed and haunted if you do. There are some tombs on base that are off limits to all except family. There are signs that say off limits by order of the commanding general and everything. Well, that's not good. Walk up to path. Shine flashlight into brush. Nothing. Cry out. Ask if anyone's there. No one. Tired, wet, and a little spooked, so I just say fuck it and go back because it's probably a ghost anyway, lol. Tell the guy it was probably a cat or something. There are wild cats all over Okinawa. Yeah, right. 2 hours later. Sentry relieved, different guy at the gate. Sentry radios. Tells me he saw someone walking into the brush. God damn it. It's like 2 a.m. Windier than before. Still pouring. The guy had no idea about what happened earlier. Go check it out again. Ask the sentry if it looked like a nurse. Yeah. Okay. At this point, I'm a little more curious, so I tell myself I'll actually go in this time. Get up there, cry out, still no one. Step over some bushes and go into the jungle. Immediate regret, but decide to keep going. It's so dark. Flashlight just makes it creepier. Remember that there are a lot of snakes this time of year, so big ass banana spiders. Pretty scared. Tell myself I will keep going until I see the sign. They're big red and yellow signs, you can't miss them. It's a lot darker in the woods, but also seemed a lot quieter. I think the rain must have died down a little. Trail is going back a lot further than I remember. Sign should have been back there. I can't even see out of the jungle at this point. I'm so far back I can barely tell if I'm on the trail or not. I'm fucking lost. Really start to freak out. Tactical pause. Take a deep breath. Tell myself to stay calm. I could be getting shot at. Things could be worse after. Hear a soft moaning cry. Sends chills down my spine. Stricken with fear. Ask if anyone is there. It gets louder. Keeps getting louder. Seems like it's getting closer. Feel presence walk immediately behind me. Say fuck this, walk away from crying and whatever was behind me, which is further into the jungle. Feels like I'm walking on a hard surface instead of mud and standing water. Turn on flashlight. It's cobblestone. You're fucking with me. Look around a little more. I'm within 20 feet of a giant tomb. Please, whoever is buried here, forgive me, I'm lost. Crying is still same distance from me as it was before, like it's following me. Stand there because I don't know what to do. Frozen with fear, crying is getting closer. All of a sudden. Bleep. Cog, this is Echo 3, Alpha radio check over. Jump 30 feet in the air and scream a little, as well as shit self. Radio went off loud as fuck. Roger, Lima Charlie out. Put radio away. As I'm putting it down, I notice the crying stopped. Look back up. Nurse girl is standing there at the foot of the tomb looking at me. Sends a million chills down my spine. More scared than ever. She's a short Japanese girl, must be early mid-teens. Pale as snow. Instantly turn around and run out of there. Keep running until I finally get out of the jungle. Completely different area than where I came in. Make it back to the shack, soaking wet, super shaken up. Next day, I tell everyone. Guy who has been on the island forever says he's seen this nurse before. Same with some of his buddies. Ever since my lights in my room will turn off by themselves. Hear random knocks on window. No one there. Things will get knocked over, etc. Still live here. Still haunted AF. One day, my lights turned off. My roommates and I both saw a black figure. First reaction was to take a picture. Pic related. Feel nauseous and get my goosebumps every time I look at it. No, it's not fake. And oh my god. The OP added the. I want to try to be concise and still give a proper breakdown of my time growing up in a cult. I'm going to start by breaking down the ideology. Second coming of Christ. They believe the second coming is and was alive. He was a Korean man who went by the name Reverend Sun Myung Moon. He was given the mission by Jesus in a vision when he was 16 years old on a mountaintop, and it is his purpose to create an example of the ideal family, so all may shape their families in its likeness and create an ideal world. Restoration of the fall. Jesus forgives your sins, but what about restoring humanity to what it was before the fall by paying spiritual indemnities and cleansing humanity of those sins in the first place? Their idea of an indemnity is almost like paying karma forward. You can put yourself through misery to either pay for your past mistakes of humanity or to ensure good things will happen in the future. You can pay indemnity by, number 1, living in a van for years and years on one of their task forces, fundraising by selling candles or wind chimes, sometimes more than 14 hours a day, getting an arranged marriage after abstaining from absolutely any contact with the opposite sex all your life by the Reverend himself or now your parents, thereby overcoming the temptation of the fall by denying your desires and obeying the church completely. Actually, this is the most important aspect of the church, that you get matched and blessed, their word for marriage. It is the only thing that will eventually restore humanity. 3. Converting other members. 4. Doing hundreds of thousands of bows to a picture of Reverend Moon every night for X amount of days. 5. Taking cold showers every day for X days. 6. Fasting. You can drink water for a providential number of days, either 3, 7, 21, or 40. Note, you must do a 7-day fast before you get married. 7. Giving money offerings to the church. The church also started changing for ancestor liberation in the last couple decades. Just like old school Catholics, you pay to have your dear old granddad hoisted out of the pits of hell. Since the church is Korean, they have deep resentment towards the Japanese, and ancestor liberation can be thousands of dollars per person liberated. For Americans, it was a little over 100, I think. 8. Beat yourself to repetitive chants at an approved spirit cleansing event. 9. Or basically denying yourself of any human comfort or need for some time. Some do sleep deprivation conditions. There's a lot else, but I can't keep going. Growing up in the church. There are countless strange rituals in the church. Like on your birthday, you and your whole family has to get up at 5 a.m., go to your altar of the Reverend Moon, say a prayer, and offer food. When the ritual is almost over, the birthday kid usually has to take the food and offer some to each of the family members, and you always leave some on the altar. There are countless stories told to the second generation of members who left the church and immediately got hit by a bus or became prostitutes and died of ODing or committed S-word out of guilt. Koreans. Korea in the church is seen as the new Jerusalem, Koreans being the new chosen people. Every leader in the church is a Korean, despite the religion's heavy unification of world cultures and religions overtones. Koreans often were only matched to other Koreans. None of Moon's kids were allowed to marry anyone other than a Korean. Japanese members have always been the church's cash cows, guilting them into paying more in tithing and overcharging them for everything. Americans got their fair share of that too. The church often comes up with a new ceremony like a holy wine ceremony, while drinking the new blessed wine, usually juice, will heal you of all your sins. That, of course, you have to pay big money to get into. Sometimes they just make a big plea for extra money, like their total life offering, which was something like if you paid the church $16,000, you would never have to pay them for anything again, which was a lie. Some members took out second mortgages on their homes to pay these offerings. My wrists are seriously hurting from typing this much, so I'll leave some space for questions. I haven't even made a dent in the beliefs, rituals, or culture of the church yet. I will say, in response to people in this thread who ask how someone could fall for this and how people can stay in it for so long, cults like this never approach it like, hey, a Korean guy is the Messiah. You want to join? They take you through steps, almost like Scientology, but not so clearly defined. The Unification Church was going around in America in the 70s preaching for true love and family values. Stuff many people, especially people with Christian backgrounds, can get behind. The church does have heavy Christian influence. So much of the language is the same. But they'll start discussing these things with you, like the evils in the world. If Jesus restored the world, then why would there need to be a second coming? We should prepare ourselves for the next Messiah. A Messiah is exactly what we need. How else can we right the wrongs of this world? Once you get going on that, you can just pump them with all the same religious feel-good stuff. God is our Father. God is watching out for you. He wants the best for you. God hurts when you don't do what's right. And eventually, God becomes some kind of emotionally sensitive dude you have to coddle and take care of. Then once your members are pumped, they're living in vans, they're trying to recruit other people, that's when you start with the deeper shit. You know, the Messiah is here. The tension has been building to this moment for literally years. The members are overjoyed and can't wait to do anything this guy says so they can be like Jesus' first disciples. No one thinks they're a victim. They think they're literally saving the world. It appealed to a lot of people who were raised Christian